Well, grab your Bibles. Join us tonight. We are in the book of Job. Find your way there. Chapter 11 is where we are, and hoping that as we make our way there, that God would speak to you through His Word. Bibles around you if you need one. Every other chair has one under. We'd ask you to grab one for the simple sense that we really want God to speak to you through His Word. That we really long that it would be Him that would make it just plain to you tonight and what He's speaking here. So let's take a moment right now and ask Him for that. And I just want to invite you to put your heart, just in a position and in a place where you are listening to Him, asking Him to bring you into such a place this evening. Maybe you're already there, or maybe you find yourself tired this evening or distracted, or your mind's going 100 directions. Wherever that is, let's ask Him just to corral all of that and bring us to a place of hearing His voice. Father, you know us. I love that. Nothing's too hard for you. You know what we need tonight. Bring us into just a position, spiritually speaking, that we would be just listening to you, that your word would just shine a light into our lives, and that you would be just guidance to us. Lord, I ask for your Spirit just to guide this evening, putting my confidence in nothing else but you. That you would make this time just beneficial, that you would make it a time that our hearts would be just met by you. Bring us to that, each and every one of us. We ask for that right now. In Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Sometimes pain can just be confusing. That is certainly one of the main lessons that's found for us in the book of Job. We're making our way through this book and have titled the series in many ways, just the problem of pain. And it is a problem. We think about what it is, and in the book of Job, Job has encountered just these incredibly difficult, perhaps some of the most difficult problems that could have ever been met. His whole world falls apart. He loses everything. He loses his kids, and then he loses his health. His whole world crashes. Now, we get a big picture of it. We see in the first chapters of Job that he's a good man. In fact, he's the best man on the whole planet, God says. He's godly, and none of this comes to him because he deserves it, because he's somehow done something wrong. In fact, God is doing things, Satan's attacking. There are things behind the scenes, but we know this, he's a good man. Now, the end of the book of Job, God's going to give some answers that are going to be incredibly timely and wonderfully helpful as He speaks into that. But the majority of the book of Job is this idea of wrestling with the problem in the midst of pain. The confusion that is there is we really have kind of 4 rounds, if you want to think about it that way, of Job and his friends discussing his suffering, trying to figure it out, trying to figure why, figure what this is about. That can actually be one of the most difficult things that life kind of has in the midst of suffering. We're in really that first round, and so we'll just kind of think about it this way, and let me kind of catch you up to where we are. It really Job just began speaking for the very first time to his friends, and he's in despair, not turning away from God, he's in despair, and he just lets them know, I'm not okay. I'm not okay, and I'm not doing well. His friends began to speak into that. His first friend, Eliphaz, just talks to him and says, hey, the innocent don't really suffer, Job. Hey, if it quacks like a duck, it's a duck kind of thing. If they're suffering, it must be you sinned. End of story is what he says. If you're hurting, you must have done something wrong. That's just how he sees it. And Job responds and says, what does that prove? Your arguments don't help anything that I'm going through right now. Instead, he just continues to kind of complain and just to ask God questions, really in the midst of it saying, God, how long? And he tells us in one sense that he feels comfortless. He feels like it's never, ever, ever going to get better in the midst of it. Well, at that moment, his next friend speaks, Bildad, and he just tells Job, hey, God is just. You can't blame God for this. The only thing that could have happened here is you must have sinned. If it's you or God, it's you, Job. And so if God didn't mess up and he can't, it must have been you. You must have done something wrong. It's a horrendous kind of application and just pressing into Job's life. And Job responds. He says, God is just. God is just, but there are questions that we have because it's not so simple as that. And he says, if I could talk to him, but I really can't. I really can't, but if I could, I'd have questions. And then he begins to tell us what some of those questions are as to what he would say, and the essence of it is found in that just basic question, why? God, what are you doing? Why do you allow things like this? God, why? I mean, that's a hard question. That's where we ended last week. And so, final person in this first round is Job's third friend, Zophar. He's going to speak here in chapter 11, and then Job's going to respond. I'm going to do my very best to make us all the way through this evening. That's 4 chapters, by the way. So we're going to do a lot of reading through it. But if you've been with us in Job, you already began to understand that, again, a reminder, this is poetry. It's Hebrew poetry. It's in the sense that it's speaking things, so it's not rhyming, but it's thoughts, but it's meant to catch you and to feel it. So we're going to read through this whole section, making comments, helping us understand the flow of things. But it's not as important that you get every little detail, if I can say it that way. It's meant to feel it. And I'm hoping you are. I'm hoping you're being almost drawn into it, where you kind of get the grip of what's happening. So we begin there in chapter 11. Zophar steps into the scene. He gets to speak. And he says it this way. Verse 1, Then Zophar, the Ammonite, answered and said, Should not the multitude of words be answered? And should a man full of talk be vindicated? Should your empty talk make men hold their peace? And when you mock, should no one rebuke you? You probably catch it, but in one sense, he just says, Job, you got a lot of words. You speak lots of words, but there's not anything that vindicates you in the midst of this. You have a bunch of empty talk, he says. You're just full of talk, but that doesn't fix the problem, he says. And then he presses in. It says in verse 4, For you have said, My doctrine is pure, and I am clean in your eyes. Quick pause. That's not exactly what Job said. Job said that he was blameless. That doesn't mean perfect, but it does mean that he's dealt with all of his sin, that he's not openly living in defiance to God. He hasn't forsaken God. But he says, you said you're pure. You said you're clean. But oh, that God would speak and open his lips against you. Then he would show you the secrets of wisdom, and they would double your prudence. Know therefore that God exacts from you less than your iniquity deserves. Hey, that's really comforting. It's just like as if you can come and say, Job, it could be worse. It could be worse. You actually deserve worse. That's what he's saying in one sense. He says, God is punishing you less than you deserve. You think it's bad now. If God really gave you what you deserved, it would be bad. You deserve this, Job. But God is not giving you the full weight of it. And he lays out just, in one sense, the picture there of depravity, this picture there of Job's just wickedness. And he says, you just need to understand how much you deserve this. That's really hard words. But he presses in further. It says in verse 7, Can you search out the deep things of God? Can you find out the limits of the Almighty? They are higher than the heavens. Well, what can you do? Deeper than Sheol, what can you know? Their measure is longer than the earth and broader than the sea. If he passes by, imprisons, and gathers to judgment, then who can hinder him? For he knows deceitful men, and he sees wickedness also. Will he not then consider it? For an empty-headed man will be wise, and a wild donkey's colt is born a man. Zophar, in one sense, highlights God's sovereignty. He says, in one sense, God is bigger than you know. Could you search out the deep things of God, he asks him? Could you find the limits of the Almighty? Man, they're higher than heavens. He's deeper than Sheol. God is so much bigger than you, Job, is what he's saying. And there's so much that you don't understand, and there's no way to stop his hand. When God does something, he just does it, and then he really tosses a pretty blatant insult there in verse 12. It says, in one sense, again, Job, you're empty-headed. It's as if you're behaving, could a donkey become a man? You're behaving like an animal, Job. You're altogether foolish. It's a pretty pointed rebuke. But he applies it in his own logic, thinking this through and him saying, hey, this is what I see. And he gives a very familiar kind of call that each of Job's friends do. He says, here's the thing, Job, if you would just confess your sins and turn to God, everything would get better. That's what he says, verse 13. If you would prepare your heart, stretch out your hand toward him, if iniquity were in your hand and you put it far away and would not let wickedness dwell in your tents, then surely you could lift up your face without spot. Yes, you could be steadfast and not fear, because you would forget your misery and remember it as waters that have passed by. hey, Job, you've sinned. I mean, that's the only reason you could be in this kind of problem. But if you would just turn to God, all that you're going through right now, you would just forget it. It would be so much better because you would have God back in your life. Verse 17, and your life would be brighter than noonday. And though it were dark, you would be like the morning. And you would be secure because there is hope. Yes, you would dig around you and take your rest in safety. You would also lie down and no one would make you afraid. Yes, and many would court your favor. But the eyes of the wicked would fail, and they shall not escape, and their hope, loss of life. So Zophar steps in, and he says basically the same thing that all of his friends say. They come in different directions. They're saying it from different avenues, but they're all saying, Job, it must be your fault. It must be your fault. Now, here's part of the problem. We've talked about this already. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it is our sin that's messed up our lives. And sometimes things are happening and God allows those things to cause us to turn back to God. Sometimes that's true. It's just not always true. And Job hasn't done anything. He hasn't forsaken God. He hasn't rejected God. He hasn't turned to sin. And yet that's what everybody's assuming. And they're saying, if you would just do this, everything would get better. That's not true. It doesn't work that way. But that's the advice they give. And in one sense, the weight of that falls on Job as he's listening to this man, this third friend of Job. By the way, Zophar, we're only going to hear from him twice. Though there are going to be a number of rounds of conversation, he only speaks up twice. And both of them are very caustic, very just pointed. And it definitely is that way. So Job's processing this. I mean, he's thinking through everything that's there. He's thinking through what it was just told him. And so now we get Job's reply. And Job speaks, and he admits that in one sense that God is sovereign. But he simply tells him, but you're wrong. God is sovereign, but your conclusions are wrong. And so we have that bit really flowing through chapter 12 and halfway through chapter 13. So let's just note it there. Job begins to answer. It says in verse 1 of chapter 12, and he said, no doubt you are the people, and wisdom will die with you. Is that okay for me to pause and say, sometimes I just enjoy that? I mean, I don't know if that's okay. That's sarcasm. I think you get that. He's like, boy, you guys got all the... Boy, I mean, when you die, the whole world's going to be empty of wisdom. Because you guys obviously have the whole world figured out, kind of a thing. It says, no doubt you are the people, and wisdom will die with you. But I have understanding as well as you. I'm not inferior to you. Indeed, who does not know such things as these? He says, I know these things. I know what you're talking about. He says, I know these there. I'm one who's mocked by his friend, who called on God, and he answered him. I mean, I have a relationship with God. God has met me, and the just and blameless, who is ridiculed. He says, you guys, you're taking things and I know some of what you're saying, but you're applying it wrongly. And he makes this kind of cutting sarcasm against them and just kind of showing where they are. But he says, I understand these things, and I'm really the one that's mocked. And then he says it this way. He says that I'm one, in verse 5, a lamp, despised, and the thought of one who is at ease, who is made ready for those whose feet slip. The tents of robbers prosper, and those who provoke God are secure in what God provides by his hands. Job says, I'm a lamp despised by those at ease. It's a good picture just to stop and think about it just for a moment. Job's walking, and he's in one sense saying, I'm enveloped in darkness. My whole world is confusing at this moment. And I'm just barely, I'm like this lamp, just somehow trying to make one step forward in the midst of a dark place. And yet you're at ease and you're mocking me. You despise me because you're not going through what I'm going through right now. And it is so often the case that in one sense it's so easy to look from the outside. You're looking from the outside thinking you know everything. You're not putting everything together. And I'm having a really difficult time. He's mocked by those at ease. I think it's a powerful picture. He says in one sense, he thinks about everything that's happening. He says, the tents of robbers prosper, verse 6, and those who provoke God are secure in what God provides by his hands. He's saying it doesn't always work that way. There are people that are sinning greatly and they're getting away with horrendous things. Horrendous things. It doesn't really work that way. And he says, in one sense, but this we do understand. Even the animals understand what you're saying, Zophar. He says, but now ask the beasts, and they will teach you, and the birds of the air, and they will tell you. Or speak to the earth, and it will teach you. and the fish of the sea will explain to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this, and whose hand is the life of every living thing, and the breath of all mankind? Who does not the ear test words, and the mouth taste its food? Wisdom is with aged men, and its length of days understanding. It says even the animals understand. If you could really get them, they know that God is sovereign. I mean, God is over everything. God is the one that's given life. He's the one that's done that. And he says it even more, and he just in a very poetic way, just expresses the wonder of God's sovereignty. He says it in verse 13, with him are wisdom and strength, and he has counsel and understanding. If he breaks a thing down, it cannot be rebuilt. If God says no to something, there's nothing you can do about it because God is sovereign. If he imprisons a man, there can be no release. If he withholds the waters, then they dry up. If he sends them out, then they overwhelm the earth. With him are strength and prudence. The deceived and the deceiver are his, and he leads counselors away plundered. And he makes fools of the judges. He loosens the bonds of kings and binds the waist with the belt. He leads princes away plundered and overthrows the mighty. He deprives the trusted ones of speech, and he takes away the discernment of elders. He pours out contempt on princes and disarms the mighty. He uncovers deep things out of darkness, and he brings the shadow of death to light. He makes nations great and destroys them. Boy, that's one of those things to stop and ponder even where we are. I mean, as a nation, it's okay, God, he'll either bless or he will pull down. He says, but he's God, because God is the one that's over all of those things. He enlarges nations and guides them, and he takes away the understanding of the chiefs of the people of the earth and makes them wander in pathless wilderness. They grope in the dark without light, and he makes them stagger like a drunken man. Again, much that's in there, but just from a very poetic standpoint, he's just saying God's God. He's over everything. He's over everything, and there's not anything that he's not over. I mean, when he does something, it's done. And there's not anything that's too hard for him. There's not anything that's too confusing to him. He says, I know what you're saying, Zophar. God is God. But then he says it this way in chapter 13, verse 1. Behold, my eye has seen all this. My ear has understood it, has heard and understood it. What you know, I also know. I'm not inferior to you. I know this. I know who God is. I know that he's big. I know that he's sovereign. He says, but I would speak to the Almighty and desire to reason with God. He says, I know these things, but I want to talk to God. I have questions. And in one sense, he's even saying, in one sense, that should be what they're doing instead of arguing with him. And then he says it this way. Verse 4. You are forgers of lies. You are all worthless physicians. It's a powerful picture. He says, here's what you are. I mean, you're worthless physicians. Now, this is worth just kind of catching for a moment because the idea is they're trying to prescribe a remedy like a doctor would do so, but they're doing it wrong. They're prescribing the wrong medicine to the wrong patient. He says, you're worthless. You're not doing anything well. In fact, I like it. Dave Guzik in his commentary says it this way. They misapplied the most precious truths and the most edifying of doctrines. They turned wholesome food to poison, pressed upon their friend those half-truths which are sometimes the worst of untruths. He says they've taken these things, incredible truths, things of God's sovereignty, things of God's power, things of how God's working. They've taken these things that are some of the most comforting of things, and they've turned them into be something that is destructive, turned it into be something that's not helpful at all. They've taken these things and are making them become altogether just hurtful to Job. He says, you're worthless. You're forgers of lies. Oh, that you would be silent, verse 5, and that would be your wisdom. If you just would be quiet, that would really be a good thing, and there's wisdom in that. As he lays out all these things and he's saying these things, he says, now hear my reasonings and heed the pleadings of my lips. As he kind of expresses these things, he says, here's the problem. He says, will you speak wickedly for God and talk deceitfully for him? Will you show partiality for him? Will you contend for God? Will it be well when he searches you out? Can you mock him as one mocks a man? He will surely rebuke you. And if you secretly show partiality, will not his excellence make you afraid, and the dread of him fall upon you? Your platitudes are proverbs of ashes, and your defenses are defenses of clay. Zophar has approached this as one kind of a theological thing, trying to figure all these things out. But what Job is saying is you've gone beyond what God has said. You're speaking for God, but he's not talking. That in one sense, they're adding to God's words. And he just says, will you do that? How will that work when you see God? And in one sense, you've added to what he said and just how he sees that. I mean, God speaks clearly about this. I think about the book of Proverbs where it says every word of God is pure. He is a shield to those who put their trust in him. I mean, God has given us his word and it's wonderful. Do not add to his words. Don't add to him, lest he rebuke you and you be found a liar. See, that's what Zophar did. And this is just one of those kind of quick warnings that I could spend a long time on, but I'm going to give it briefly. Especially for some of you that are deep thinkers, be careful of going beyond what God says. Be careful of adding to his words. Be careful of, well, I know it doesn't actually say that in the Bible, but if you reason it through, it has to get there. That's a dangerous place. Those often comes to conclusions that are not God's conclusions. And he says, you're going to stand before him? And I don't know how, when you stand before God and he confronts you for going beyond what he said, he says that is not going to be a comfortable place for you. That's not going to be a comfortable place for you. And in one sense, therein lies that great danger. And that's exactly what's going to happen, is it not? You get to the end of the book of Job and God tells, just Job's friends, I'm not okay with you. Job's going to have to pray for you because he spoke what's right, you spoke what's wrong. And it's a dangerous place. And just a quick warning of being one that would go beyond what God says. And there is a danger. And a danger when times we feel like we have to give an answer for God that he doesn't give. There's a danger when you feel like in your life or maybe in somebody else's life they're asking a question and God doesn't clearly answer that question in Scripture. And yet you feel somehow moved to come up with an answer in your own mind, to feel like, well, you're going to become God's defense attorney. You're going to explain God to people in ways that God himself has not explained himself clearly in Scripture. That's a dangerous place. But that's sometimes what happens, especially in pain, is people try to process things through that God has not explained. And yet we try to figure it out. He says, that is not a good place. You don't want to do that. Well, Job, that's his answer. I do agree with you so far. God is sovereign, but you're wrong in your application of that. You're wrong in how you're applying that to this situation. And so Job now turns, and as he does in most of the things, he turns from answering the question to, again, just expressing how he's feeling in the midst of it. He says it this way, just as he kind of begins there in chapter 13, verse 13, running to chapter 14, you can kind of sum up this last little section as I've done there. It's a trust, it's a hope, but it's a confusion and it's a mourning. Let me see if I can make sense of that. He begins with perhaps one of the neatest of expressions. In verse 13, he says, hold your peace with me and let me speak, then let me come home what may. I mean, it's almost like you can just see them about ready to answer Job. He's like, wait. Just let me keep talking for a moment, then you guys can say whatever you want to say. You can do that. He says, why do I take my flesh in my teeth and put my life in my hands? Though he slay me, yet I will trust him. Even so, I will defend my ways before him. Job says, here's the thing. Even if no matter what happens to my life, I'm still going to trust in God, but I'm confused. That's an amazing statement. In fact, it's kind of the overarching dish that flows over this whole little section, and we're going to come back and end with that here in a few moments to talk more about it. But I just want to tell you it's an amazing place where Job is saying, I trust God, but I'm confused. I trust him, but I'm confused. He says, even so, I'm going to defend my ways before him. He says in this sense, he lays it out go back to it there. He lays it out and says, that in verse 16, he also shall be my salvation. For a hypocrite could not come before him. He says, I'm going to trust him. He's going to be my salvation. Hypocrites can't stand before him. I understand that. Listen carefully to my speech and to my declaration with your ears. See, I've prepared my case, and I know that I shall be vindicated. He says, I know this. If God's going to make this right, I know that it is. Who is he who will contend with me? If I now hold my tongue, I perish. He says, I got to talk, but I know that God's going to work this out. I know he is. But I still am confused. And so he begins to speak not to his friends, but to God. And he says in verse 20, he says, only two things do not do to me. Then I will not hide myself from you. Withdraw your hand far from me, and let not the dread of you make me afraid. Begins to speak to God. He says, God, I want to talk to you. If you could just give me two things. One, stop. Stop this pain. Stop what I'm going through. Take your hand off of me, because he feels just that God's hand is upon him in suffering. He says, and then I'd like to talk to you, but don't terrify me, because you're God. I just want to ask you some questions. I mean, I'm just confused about this whole thing. He says, then call and I will answer, and let me speak. Then you respond to me. And he begins to ask God questions. How many are my iniquities and my sins? Make me to know my transgression and sin. God, if it really is me, if I did something, then show me. But he's not aware of anything that's there. Why do you hide your face and regard me as your enemy? That's a lot easier to read than it is to feel. I just want you to understand that's kind of what I put there even as the overarching thought in this. He says, God, I feel like I'm your enemy. I mean, that's how I feel right now. I feel like you're against me. I feel like you're treating me like your enemy. And he's asked, God, why do I feel that way? I mean, why is it that? Why are you treating? I don't understand what's happening at this moment, because this is how I feel. It's not a comfortable place to be. It's not a comfortable place to feel. Will you frighten a leaf driven to and fro, verse 25? Will you pursue dry and stubble? You write bitter things against me and make me inherit the iniquities of my youth. You put my feet in stocks and watch closely all my paths and set a limit for the soles of my feet. Man decays like a rotten thing, like a garment that is moth-eaten. He says, God, that's how I feel. I just feel like my whole life is decaying, and you're against me. And then he talks about life. He talks about his life and the life of mankind. He says, man, verse 1 of chapter 14, man is born of woman and few of days and full of trouble. He says, when you look at life, that's what we have. We have this short life, and it's a difficult life. It's got lots and lots of trouble to it. Few days and full of trouble. He comes forth like a flower and fades away. He flees like a shadow and does not continue. And do you open your eyes on such a one? Do you bring me to judgment with yourself? Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean? No one. Since his days are determined and the number of his months with you, you have appointed his limits so he cannot pass. Look away from him that he may rest, that to like a hired man he finishes his day. He says, God, you're big, but we're so small. Our life happens so fast. And it seems to just come undone at times and just to stand against you. And then he makes a comparison that helps him just kind of process through what he's feeling. He says, life for man, it doesn't sprout again. And he compares man to a tree. It says in verse 7, he says, for there is hope for a tree. If it is cut down, it will sprout again. And its tender shoots will not cease. He says, you take a tree and you cut it down. You know, that same tree can still have life. And though it's gone through something so horrible, it can still come up again. It says, though its roots may grow old like the earth and its stump may die in the ground, yet at the scent of water it will bud and bring forth branches like a plant. But man dies and is laid away. Indeed, he breathes his last. Where is he? As water disappears from the sea, as rivers become parched and dries up, so a man lies down and does not rise. And the heavens are no more. They will not awake nor be roused from their sleep. Job looks at this, and again, he's making a comparison. He says, when you think about a tree, again, you guys know, you've maybe visited some of the parks, and you've seen trees that are literally hundreds and hundreds of years old, and they'll tell you, hey, they cut this one down and then grows up. I love going to Israel, and we step through the Garden of Gethsemane, and we look at some of the trees that are there, and literally some of the trees are probably dated back to the time of Christ. I mean, it's an amazing thing. To see them cut down, but the same root system still holds up life. It's an amazing reality. And Job says that's not how we are. Man isn't that way. This isn't a karma thing. We don't go in cycles. I mean, we die and we die. Now, he's not here talking about eternity. Some find fault with Job and say that he's buying into a conclusion that man has no eternal life. That's not where Job is. Surely he doesn't understand God's eternity perfectly, but who of us does? He does speak about it. He'll talk about it in the book of Job. When I see him, I'm going to see him. In my flesh, I'm going to see him. He knows that there is life after death. But what he also knows is on this side of eternity, you die and that's it. I mean, it's not like you get multiple chances at this whole thing. You're born, you grow up, and you die at some point. It's not that you can go back and start all over again and say, can I try again? Can I do that over? He says, no, when you think about our lives, it's so short and it happens so fast and so much of it is just marked with pain. He's like, God, I don't understand. I mean, I'm just wrestling through some of these things, he's saying. But he goes even further, verse 13, he says, oh, that you would hide me in the grave. He says, in one sense, I just want to die. I mean, I'm just tired of this, of the pain. And that you would conceal me until your wrath is past. He says, I just would wish that happened, that you would appoint me a set time and remember me. If a man dies, shall he live again? All his days of my hard service, I will wait till my change comes. He knows it's coming. He says, I know that, when I die, there's going to be a change. There's going to be a time. I'm going to, all this is going to pass. You shall call and I will answer you. Verse 15, you shall desire the work of your hands. For now you number my steps. But do not watch over my sin. My transgression is sealed up in a bag, and you cover my iniquity. He longs for the grave. He longs for it in many ways. He longs for even what's going to be past that. He says, till the wrath is over, till the pain is done, and I awake, and my change comes. I know that's coming. I know that's coming. Those are some incredibly rich understandings. But don't miss how Job is saying it. It's not that he doesn't know that's true. See, you could read these things, and if you weren't thinking it through, you'd think, well, Job, you're fine. You're fine. I mean, you know that, the wrath is going to pass. You know there's going to be a change coming. I mean, you understand this. You're great. But Job describes that's not how he feels. Notice how he describes it. In verse 18, he says, as a mountain falls and crumbles away, as a rock is moved from its place, as water wears away stones, as torrents wash away the soil of the earth, so you destroy the hope of man. It's not always the most comforting thing when somebody's going through difficult things just to remind them of eternity. I mean, it is true. You need to kind of look at somebody and say, you know what, heaven's coming. It's all going to be better. This is just a moment. But, sometimes when you're in the midst of it, Job says, I feel like my life, it's like eroding all my hopes. He says, I know that's true. I know there's going to be hope. I know that God is there. But right now, that's not how I feel. I feel like a mountain's crumbling, like a rock is moving, like stones are wearing away, and you're destroying my hope. I mean, though I know it, I don't feel it. I don't know if you've ever been there. But just know this, sometimes people are. Don't get mad at them. Don't think ill of them when they just, can't even find hope in eternity, when the present moment is so difficult, that's all they can see. And even though you could ask them, well, don't you believe in Jesus? Don't you believe in heaven? I do, but right now, I feel like my hopes are eroding. I feel like somehow it's there, but I can't even feel it in many ways, Job is saying. It says in verse 20, you prevail forever against him, and he passes on. You change his countenance and send him away. And someone's come to no honor, and he does not know it. They are brought low, and he does not perceive it. But his flesh will be in pain over it, and his soul will mourn over it. You just got to hear that Job is having a difficult time. I know that probably makes sense. And I know that in one sense you can't read through these words without knowing that. But I'm just going to tell you that's really hard. Pain can be so incredibly confusing. To find yourself in the midst of pain, to find yourself in the midst of struggles, to find yourself, just wrestling through things, wrestling through those realities. It can find itself in one of those places that though you're facing it, though you feel it, though you know it, it's still hard. I just want to make sure you catch that, because I want to take us back in a moment. I want to talk about some of the things that Job knows, and I want to tell you how wonderful those things are. But I just want to make sure that I don't do this disservice. I want to make sure that you don't hear it as in a way of saying, hey, this makes everything better. It's true, but it still is hard. And again, I don't know if that's where you are this evening. I don't know if you're in the midst of just a difficulty where you find yourself thinking, I know the Bible's true, I believe in those things, but it's just hard for me right now. That's where Job is, and that's honest. And God is pretty good with that. I just want you to know that. God is good within the midst of that But I want to tell you what Job is doing. In fact, it goes well if I can just take you back to how he began this whole statement. I mean, he's talking against Zophar. He answered Zophar's question, but now he's going to express where he is. And he says it in a very powerful way. And you just can't miss it. Go back again, verse 15. It says, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Job feels like God's his enemy, feels like God's allowing things to happen in his life. And he says, you know what? God might even just kill me. I don't even know. But here's one of the key things that you must understand about Job. He's wrestling deeply, but he never turns away from God, ever. That's part of his problem. See, Job never forsakes God. He's just confused with God. It's as if he's like, God, I just would like to talk to you. I mean, if you could just explain. I mean, I don't know, I don't understand. But he doesn't use this as some cause to move away. He says, you know, God, I mean, this could get as bad as it gets. I'm still going to trust you. I'm still going to trust you. But it's still hard. I love that, and I think there's something so helpful in this. I know it's not always that way. I mean, I've heard the stories. I've heard the people who talk about that, who hit some really incredibly difficult place. I remember years ago hearing Ted Turner, for those who remember him, and him talking about how he turned away from God when his sister got sick and died. And just, he said, that's it. You know, if that's what happens, I'm done. I mean, he hit one incredibly tragic moment, and for him, whatever he thought he might have known, it just went out the window. I'm just telling you, sometimes that happens. It's wrong. But it's a misunderstanding of who God is. The wonderful person is the person like Job who can say, you know, I don't understand. And I don't understand what God is allowing, and I don't know why. And I have questions. But here's what I do know. I'm still going to trust him and still ask questions. I'm going to trust him. I have questions, but I'm not letting go of him. And maybe that's where God would want to meet you in the midst of this, that something about Job, even though he's so incredibly honest, and his honesty might even scare you, but he holds fast to God. I love this verse. It's been one that God has met me with a number of times. In fact, I want to move at this moment. You know, when we started the book of Job, I knew that we were going to get to chapter 13 and began wondering if I would share just something that just God had done in me, and so I'm going to, and I don't know how it's going to come across, and I don't know how you're going to receive it, but I'm going to share anyway. There's a video that was done, a Shane and Shane song that was done from this verse, and there's a video that's made, and it's kind of just put together with a small sermon jam from John Piper, and it's one that I've listened to many, many times, and God has met me in it a number of times, and I've shared it with a number of people, and it's interesting. I've talked to a number of people who, have just, from just this single thought, have found incredible help. I mean, I know I was talking to someone who said, the video I'm about to show you, they've probably watched it 100 times. They said, I've just set it on repeat sometimes, just to let it just soak into me. And so I want to play it for you. Again, it's going to be a song and a little of a sermon jam. You're welcome to watch the video. You're welcome to just close your eyes and just kind of let it soak in for a moment, if that would be there. And then we're going to come back in again, and we're going to sing the same song. So in one sense, I'm not inviting you to sing it at this moment, but I'm just inviting you just to allow it to hit it as Shane and Shane takes this verse, but also weaves it together with the promises we have from the New Testament. The promises that we know that everything's working together for good, that we know that our sufferings have a purpose, that what we're going through is nothing compared to what's coming, and yet just allowing that to meet you there. So let me just kind of take this and share it with you, then I'll come back and share again, and we'll kind of walk through that. But I hope that in one sense, God could just meet you this evening as he's met me. So here's the video.
I come, return to the Lord, the one who's broken, the one who's torn me apart. You strike down to bind me up. You say you do it all in love, that I might know you slay me, yet I will praise you. Though you take from me, I will bless your name. Though you ruin me, still I will worship. Sing a song to the one who's all I need. My heart and flesh may fade, the earth below give way, but with my eyes, I'll see the Lord lifted high upon that day. Behold the Lamb that was slain, and I'll know that every tear was worth it all. And though you slay me, yet I will praise you. Though you take from me, I will bless your name. Though you ruin me, still I will worship. Sing a song to the one who's all I need. Though tonight I'm crying out, let this cup pass from me now. You're still more than I need. You're enough for me. You're enough for me. Oh,
Not only is all your affliction momentary, not only is all your affliction light in comparison to eternity and the glory there, but all of it is totally meaningful. Every millisecond of your pain from the fallen nature or fallen man, every millisecond of your misery in the path of obedience is producing a peculiar glory you will get because of that. I don't care if it was cancer or criticism. I don't care if it was slander or sickness. It wasn't meaningless. It's doing something. It's not meaningless. Of course you can't see what it's doing. Don't look to what is seen. When your mom dies, when your kid dies, when you got cancer at 40, when a car careens into the sidewalk and takes her out, don't say, it's meaningless. It's not. It's working for you an eternal weight of glory. Therefore, do not lose heart, but take these truths and day by day focus on them. Preach them to yourself every morning. Get alone with God and preach His word into your mind until your heart sings with confidence that you are new and cared for.
though you slay me, yet I will praise you. Though you take from me, I will bless your name. Though you ruin me, still I will worship. Sing a song to the one who's all I need. I'll sing a song to the one who's all I need.
God is indeed working. I mean, we have that incredible promise, and yet maybe from just Job's words, maybe you could get to just that one place and say, God, no matter what you do, I'm still going to trust you. Even if you slayed me, even if it got as bad as it could get, I'll trust you. So I want to play the song again. And I don't know, I mean, I recognize song styles are different, and some of you will like it, some of you won't. But I want to invite you to sing to it. Now, that's a little bit of a challenge because you've just heard this, maybe some of you the first time. Shane and Shane also like sing really high, so that can be a little bit of a challenge. But you know what? This isn't a choir. You know, we're not here to sing for how we sound. I think there's something powerful, and maybe it would just be having the words on the screen that you could say these to God tonight. Maybe for some of you, it's exactly where you are, where you'd be able to say, God, I don't understand. Even if you slayed me, I'm still going to trust you. I'm going to trust you right now. So I'm just going to play it again. Again, this time a little bit different with lyrics on it. Even the John Piper quote's going to be on there. So just allow it, just kind of soak over you. And then we'll come back up and close in prayer and maybe a final song of worship. So just one more time. Hey, just inviting you right now. Hey, this is a time to sing. This is a time to, even if you just sing quietly, even if it's just kind of a prayer between you and God, I just invite you to enter into this. So here we go.
Return to the Lord, the one who's broken, the one who's torn me apart. You strike down to bind me up. You say you do it all in love, that I might know you in your suffering. Though you slay me, yet I will praise you. Though you take from me, I will bless your name. Though you ruin me, still I will worship, sing a song to the one is all I need. My heart and flesh may fade, the earth below give way, but with my eyes, I'll see the Lord lifted high upon that day. Behold the Lamb that was slain, and I'll know that every tear was worth it all. And though you slay me, yet I will praise you. Though you take from me, I will bless your name. Though you ruin me, still I will worship, sing a song to the one who's all I need. Though tonight I'm crying out, let this cup pass from me now. You're still more than I need. You're enough for me. You're enough for me. Oh.
Not only is all your affliction momentary, not only is all your affliction light in comparison to eternity and the glory there, but all of it is totally meaningful. Every millisecond of your pain from the fallen nature or fallen man, every millisecond of your misery in the path of obedience is producing a peculiar glory you will get because of that. I don't care if it was cancer or criticism. I don't care if it was slander or sickness. It wasn't meaningless. It's doing something. It's not meaningless. Of course you can't see what it's doing. Don't look to what is seen. When your mom dies, when your kid dies, when you got cancer at 40, when a car careens into the sidewalk and takes her out, don't say, it's meaningless. It's not. It's working for you an eternal weight of glory. Therefore, do not lose heart, but take these truths and day by day focus on them. Preach them to yourself every morning. Get alone with God and preach His word into your mind until your heart sings with confidence that you are new and cared for.
Though you slay me, yet I will praise you. Though you take from me, I will bless your name. Though you ruin me, still I will worship. Sing a song to the one who's all I need. I'll sing a song to the one who's all I need.
You know, it's such an amazing thing. Those things are true. And yet I close with this thought. You know, Job knows it, and yet he says it in such a real way. You know, there are verses like the end of Job 2 when he says, you know, blessed be the name of the Lord. You give, you take away. It's a great verse. And yet sometimes some of you are looking like, that feels so far from where I am. I like this verse, and it's met me because sometimes this feels as high as you can grab. It's like, God, I just feel like the whole world's falling apart. But I'm going to trust you. I'm not going anywhere. I don't understand. And I think there's something so powerful in that. Job would find out, you know, that everything that was said in the song, all that we know from the New Testament, that all things are indeed working together for good, that there's not anything that's happening that God's not redeeming. But I'm just wondering if maybe for somebody tonight, it was like, you know, I have a hard time comprehending that. But I can grab this. I'll trust you, even though I have no idea what you're doing. Even if life goes totally wrong, I'm not going to let go. And I just invite you to that. So let's close in prayer, and then we'll close in a song that is actually one that's taken from David when he would kind of talk about God in the same time, just God meeting him. And so let me pray, and then Pastor Phil will lead us in a closing worship song. God, we come and we thank you for the honesty of a man like Job who goes through so much and tells us it's not any fun. And tells us he's confused. But also, at the very same moment, never lets go of you. Thank you for just encapsulating such a truth in a simple sentence. That he could be able to say, Lord, even if you slay me, I'm still going to trust you. I don't understand. You don't get it. Sometimes it feels as if we're on the wrong side of things. But you're trustworthy. And I don't have to always understand. God, I just ask, I don't know where this meets us tonight. Some, this is just right what they need. Some, it's just speaking into something that was past, and they're able to look back and go, I can see that. Some are thinking of somebody else right now, just longing to communicate this to them and share this. Some, you're sowing things into our hearts that would give us strength in the trials that we go through. But Lord, I just ask that you'd meet us. And I say this, you're a trustworthy God. You're worthy of our trust. And I just ask that you draw us after that. I ask that you would be that one that would help us to grab hold of you in such a very real way, in such a very real life, and find you enough. Find that you really are all that we need. Pray for help in that, just meeting us now, and just thank you again for your truth, your word that speaks into our lives. We just bless you right now. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Let's all stand together as we close. When my heart is overwhelmed, I will look to you alone. God, my rock, God, my rock, God, my rock. You will stand when others fall. You are faithful through it all. God, my rock, God, my rock, God, my rock. In the blessing, in the pain. Through it all, you've never failed me. You are the strength of my heart. You are the strength of my heart. I can rely on you. I can rely on you. When I've struggled to believe, you have not let go of me. God, my rock, God, my rock, God, my rock. Carried through the darkest storms, you have held me in your arms. God, my rock, God, my rock, God, my rock. In the blessing, in the pain. Through it all, you've never failed me. You are the strength of my heart. You are the strength of my heart. I can rely on you. I can rely on you. You are the joy of my life. And you are my song in the night. There is no one as true. Jesus, I trust in you. You are the strength of my heart. You are the strength of my heart. I can rely on you. I can rely on you. And you are the joy of my life. And you are my song in the night. There is no one as true. Jesus, I trust in you. Jesus, we 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 trust in you, God. Oh, Lord, we do look to you, and I just pray, Lord, that you would cause us, Lord, help us just to grasp this tonight. Lord, that though we don't understand so much, Lord, you are worthy of all of our trust, and I just pray that you would help us tonight to place our confidence and our hope fully in you. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. God bless you.